I was out here for 40 fucking minutes with a whole setup to film a YouTube video talking about the movies that I've watched recently, and then I went inside and uploaded them to my phone and found out that there was no sound. And I was gonna give up, and I was like, literally all I wanted to do all day was film a video and talk about movies, so we're gonna do that now. But first, I'm gonna partake in smoking a doobie. So if you'd like to go get one of your own and do that, and then we can come back. Yeah, welcome to my YouTube channel. If you were unaware, my name is Paige, and this is Dry Gin Martini, where we talk about movies, life, pop culture, politics, and whatever comes to my mind, because it's my channel. So thank you so much for being here. Grab a drink, get comfortable, do our thing, and then we're gonna come back. And we're specifically today talking about my love for foreign cinema and the importance of conversation with people outside of your social circle. Okay? See you in a jiff. Yeah. I don't condone underage, explicit, blah, blah, blah. You already know. Let's just get into the video, and I'll maybe be more relaxed, because that was like really overstimulating for me personally. I think my favorite thing about foreign cinema, just in general, before we even get into anything, is that not only does it provide you a whole new world in terms of like the language and the style of cinematography and the sense of humor and whatever the plot is and its relation to like the country or the civilization and like the ways in which people grew up, but when you're watching a foreign film, it's also, I noticed this when I studied film in college specifically. I noticed this in my European political cinema class. But there's something about foreign cinema so different to American and like mainstream Hollywood blockbusters, in which the ways they depict relationships and vulnerability. And I don't know if it's because there's a added layer of focusing on the screen in its entirety with subtitles and reading the subtitles and comprehending what's going on with the moving images. But every time I watched a foreign film, I've just felt a little bit different afterwards and a little bit more appreciative to see and experience someone else's way of life. Because truthfully, I mean, I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Had I not studied abroad in college, I probably never would have left my bubble. And there's just so many opportunities surrounding us at all times to connect with different people from different walks of life and different backgrounds. And I think a lot of American media focuses heavily on individuality and the idea that in order to succeed, you need to be different than everybody else and you need to be unique and have something interesting to say that's never been said before. You need to create and innovate something that's never been created or innovated before, where I haven't really seen that. A lot of the foreign films that I've watched and grown to love are about genuine, raw connection and vulnerability and self-discovery in relation to relationships and connections. I haven't really found myself watching any foreign films where the main theme is about one person trying to become the greatest of all time and like tearing down everyone in their path to succeed in such a manner. So today we're going to be talking about the recent foreign films I've watched and some of my favorite foreign films that I've had the chance to watch because of studying film in college, that I would recommend to people that would probably never watch these movies on their own volition, and hope that you maybe watch them and tell me your thoughts about them. I think the main reason, there's like people walking, so I'm just gonna kind of I'm in my home, so it's not really anybody's business what I'm doing. But what I was gonna say is, in the same way that if you don't ever have a conversation with somebody from a different upbringing than you, you're missing out on so many different experiences and observations and opinions of the world, because believe it or not, your own opinion and idea of the world in which surrounds you is not the only one. And it's not like the correct one just because it's yours also, which ties back into that American individuality. I think a lot of people believe like, I was born this way and this is my way of thinking and this is the only way and it's the right way. And that's just not true. Empathy goes a very long way. And a barrier of entry to empathy in foreign cinema is subtitles. And once you get over that, I believe the quote is, your life becomes better. I'll put the real quote right here. I can't remember it word for word. But truly, like, it's pretentious. That's why I'm wearing these glasses and this hat. To like never have watched a film in a different language, to me, is missing out on, like, you're only tasting half the menu at a restaurant. Let me give you a better analogy. Genuinely feel bad for people that have never watched a foreign film or never experienced, like, someone else's life. It's like if I only ever watched movies about 20-something white blonde chicks who, you know, are angsty and angry at their parents and want to get out of their small town. It's a pretty limited worldview. Your world is only as large as you make it. So why choose to live in a tiny, ignorant, self-absorbed bubble when you could pop it and allow your world to exist with the atmosphere and be as vast as it could possibly be? So I haven't even smoked yet. So the recent foreign films that I watched that kind of inspired this video were In My Skin, which is a French film available on Tubi. I have it in front of me so that I can give you all of the important information that you so desire. Just kidding. Directed by Marina de Van. This movie came out in 2002. I'm going to read you the description and then we're just going to briefly talk about it because I've already reviewed it at nauseum on my other social media platforms, which I'm not going to panhandle to you now because we're having a very intimate moment and that would be disrespectful. Okay. Some truths cut deep. After a disfiguring leg injury, a woman develops an unsettling secret relationship with her own body, in which pain is pleasure, mutilation is love, and hungers of the flesh have a mind of their own. Now, if I can be completely honest with you, did not read that description at all until this very moment. And it is so beautifully written and gives you just enough of the plot without spoiling anything. Because I read the Tubi description, which by read it, I skimmed it. So I skimmed about the first 3 words, and then I looked at the photo, and it was like woman gets in an accident and cuts her leg, and then I saw the cover image, which is a woman eating her arm, and I was like, okay, this is a film about a woman who has an injury and then self-cannibalizes, which in not so many words, that's exactly what happens. That is a huge disservice to the film itself. Now, did I have to pause and walk away? Yes. Would I recommend you watch this on an empty stomach? Absolutely. Specifically, do not eat pasta with red sauce because that's what I was eating when I started this film. It was beautifully shot. It was incredibly introspective in terms of like the relationship she develops with her body and the self-mutilation and self-discovery she has after this injury that she sustains at a party. Basically, she's at a party, she goes outside to explore the grounds, which I'm totally down for if you're with somebody, because who knows if that house is on a cliff and you just Hannibal Lectered yourself in season 3. Like, you know, you got to be careful. So she falls and she cuts her leg open, and she doesn't, like, she notices, but she just kind of goes back into the party and is like, whatever, and then later discovers the fact that she has quite literally sliced and diced her entire calf open to the point that she's bleeding, like, leaving a trail of bloody footprints all over the house. Now, keep in mind that when that occurs, people are very, very worried, and they're like, we should call the police, somebody's injured, and like walk around the house bloody. And it's her. She doesn't say anything, which not the point. The point is that all these people are concerned, like, to an extent. They don't call the cops. They don't go to every person in that party and ask if they're okay. They can't even notice that the blood is coming from their friend's foot. But they're, like, super concerned and they need to call the cops and stop the party. So that's kind of a theme that threads itself through the film, which I'm not really picking up on until now, which is why I love talking about movies to myself on my porch in the sun, because it's like I'm discovering this theme on my own in real time for you, which is that this woman continues to suffer throughout the entire film, both physically and mentally, now that she has had this life-changing injury, right? She cut her leg open. She's going to have to get a skin graft. She does not want to. The doctor tells her it's not necessary, but highly recommended. And she's like, if I don't need it, I don't want it. And so slowly as the film goes on, she's like losing sensation in her leg, but also like losing, I don't want to say her mind, but it's like she's losing attachment to reality in the sense that like her entire perspective of her body has now changed. And, you know, I mean, I've never experienced an injury to that degree, knock on wood that I never do, but something like that where like your life could change, or you might have to remove part of like your skin from one area and move it to another. Like, this is serious stuff that I don't think people really consider. when I first was reading the description, I thought that her leg was going to be amputated, and it was going to be an instance of like having the phantom limb and the discomfort that is acclimating to losing a limb, because again, I don't think that's something anybody could ever prepare you for in life. Blah, 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 all that to say. So the film goes on, and she's suffering, she's struggling, she's harming herself, and she's kind of mentioned it to a few people. And her friends are concerned to a certain extent. Like, they're, like, worried about her, but then she gets the promotion over her friend, and her friend kind of, like, fucks off. Her boyfriend is worried about her, but, like, nobody's worried enough to care. And I guess that's kind of a beautiful representation for this self-mutilation and self-harm, because obviously, it is a hyperbolized extreme which, I mean, that could be ignorant of me to say, but she does, trigger warning, hack at herself with a knife and, like, eat her skin and, like, put her flesh in a jar and lick her blood and become really, really curious about her body, physically so that she's self-mutilating and self-cannibalizing. And there are so many physical signs that she is not okay and that her tone is shifted from the beginning of the film. And everybody's worried and be like, are you okay? But I mean, ask her to pull up a pant leg. And I don't mean that to be funny. I'm just saying, like, in society, especially growing up with shows like 13 Reasons Why, I just think people only care about mental health in a performative way to a certain extent. Because when that person that's struggling with mental health starts to get a little too irritating and annoying, you're like, oh my God, this again? When it's like, we see it on film over and over again. It's like, it's not a linear journey. So I thought that was a great representation for mental health that I'm now realizing. And there's this beautiful split screen in the beginning and end that kind of has this like cyclical feeling, and it gives you the perspective of us watching the main character and then her experience like from her own eyes. And I just thought that was also really great. So it's very introspective in terms of the way it depicts self-mutilation and self-cannibalism, but also like the self-discovery and asking for help. There was also a scene where these guys tried to throw her in the pool after she repeatedly said no one was wearing clothes at a pool party. And I just have to say, one of like the things that pisses me off, and if we want to get woke, ties into rape culture, is throwing people into a pool who have explicitly stated they don't want to be swimming, they don't want to be wet. It always reminds me of that scene in Aquamarine when Emma Roberts, her parents die in a boat incident, and so she's afraid of water, and they're at a pool party and she doesn't want to go swimming, and people pick her up and try and throw her in the pool, and she is quite literally screaming for her life, help me, no, I don't want to get, like, no. And everybody sits around and just like bystander effect watches. That fucking drives me insane, because I think that is like the PG rated E for everybody version of like rape culture. Because if you think about it, if you pick me up and try and throw me in a pool and I tell you no, why are you still trying to throw me in a pool? Who the fuck do you think you are? That is like the first sign of stripping away someone's bodily autonomy, by thinking like, oh, it's funny, everybody's in the pool. Okay, if I wanted to be in the pool, I'd be in there. I'd be in a swimsuit. I'm not. I'm in pants and a blouse. Do you think I want to swim? Okay, I'm getting a lot. I'm getting. But I would recommend this film. I would just also recommend it with some barriers and precaution, because it does deal with those themes. One of the very first things I remember when I took my first like Film 101 World Cinema class was how nudity is not inherently sexual in any other kind of media other than Western media. I have seen probably 1 million naked bodies in 1 million different movies. And the way in which we're conditioned with Western media is to believe that that's inherently sexual and inherently taboo. Like, we shouldn't be watching this. You cover your eyes when you're watching it with your siblings or your parents because it's uncomfortable to see a naked body in its truest form. And then I'm sitting in a classroom. Let me give myself some light. Then suddenly I'm seated in a classroom with 30 kids I don't know. And we're all wearing masks because it was COVID. And we're watching these movies, and a naked body with like natural breasts and a full bush are on the screen. And I was like looking around to see if anybody else was like, oh my God, we're watching naked people together. And nobody gave a fuck. And I realized in that moment that there's nothing wrong or sexual about a woman being naked. It's all of the connotations and stereotypes we place on women to objectify them and feel that way when we see it, and then feel that way in our own bodies. Not only for women, obviously, but like, it was just such an interesting epiphany to have, because I was like, there's literally nothing sexual about this. So what is it about nudity that we view it as this promiscuous act. Like wearing a tank top or a mini skirt is suggestive because it's skimpy. It's like they're just clothes. It's hot out. Like, and it really just like, that was the first thing I remember being like, stripping my mind away. That's why they say college brainwashes your kids, right? But I'm like, that was the first thing that kind of like pulled back this veil of everything that I'd grown up and thought to be like the one and only way of living. I was just like, no, dude, no. And I found that to be so interesting because nudity and sex is so prevalent in so many films. But if I were to think about American media, I would think about how rape culture is the foundation of that. If you think of shows like Game of Thrones, Criminal Minds, Law and Order SVU, I mean most law enforcement cop shows for that matter, Euphoria, any show where a teenage girl is involved in some kind of like child pornography revenge plot. It's very bizarre to me. And we started at such a young age that by the time you yourself are a teenager, especially in the digital age, you're so aware of it. Like, and I would just love to speak to somebody who grew up in France, for example, and be like, what is your relationship to sexuality and nudity based on the media that you grew up with? Because for me, it is always that thought and worry and fear of violence. Baseline violence, because it's what we're so accustomed to, right? Game of Thrones. I find that show, as well written and good as it to be until the last season, to have so much unnecessary violence towards women. I'm a firm believer that it rarely ever needs to be shown. That's why I was such a fan of Sorry Baby, directed, written, and starring Eva Victor, because the main plot point surrounds the quote-unquote bad thing that she refers to that happened to her, which was being sexually assaulted, and we never once see it because we don't need to, and it's not our business, and you don't need to see a scene like that for it to have validity and for it to have happened. You get what I'm saying? And I think that all bleeds into rape culture, which ties heavily into Western media's depiction of sex and nudity. So there's a little anecdote of that. Okay. So the next film I watched was an Icelandic film, also on Tubi. Now, I was specifically in the mood for a gay love story. I can't even lie to you. I was in the mood for a Maurice, a Call Me By Your Name, something that I was going to sob hysterically over. And while that happened, it was totally different than what I had expected, okay? Now, think like I was looking for my heated rivalry moment, okay? And so I'm scrolling through, and I see this movie, and I just absolutely loved the poster. And yes, I judge books by their cover. I'm only human. And I saw Heartstone, which you probably can't see my phone, and that's totally okay. We are outside. But I saw this, and I just immediately clicked on it, and I was like, yeah, we're going to watch this. And I read the description, and by read, I mean skimmed. And then I watched it, and I cried, and I haven't stopped thinking about it. And I told all my friends about it yesterday at our Last Supper feast that we had yesterday evening. So like I'm just gonna share it with you because I was so excited, and that was really the movie that made me want to film this video. Saw Heartstone. I'm gonna read you the description. Unfortunately, I'm going to butcher the director's name. Guðmundur Arnar Moonsen. So I can actually totally try harder. Guðmundur Arnar Gudmundsson. Let me read you the description. Alright. The summer that will change your life. A remote fishing village in Iceland. Teenage boys Thor and Christian experience a turbulent summer as one tries to win the heart of a girl while the other discovers new feelings towards his best friend. When summer ends and the harsh nature of Iceland takes back its rights, it's time to leave the playground and face adulthood. Okay, so we have Thor and we have Christian. They're two bestinas that live in Iceland. Now I'm going to give you rapid fire, like their familial relationships, because we do kind of bounce back and forth, but Thor is the main protagonist of this story, in my opinion, from what I saw. So Thor lives at home. He has a single mother. Their father left them and lives in the South, and they haven't seen him in a couple of years. And then he has two older sisters. Raquel is the oldest, who is kind of, the way I could describe her is she is like She is like a fire in the summer that's like crackling, and then somebody throws one thing in and it blows up. But it could be an aluminum can, or it could be like gasoline, you don't know. Like, it just sparked that fire up because she's so loving and caring towards her brother and her sister Haftis. Again, apologies for butchering that. However, she's so mean to her mother, and I get it because she's a protective older sister and she has this anger towards her mother for the way she raises them. But watching it from the outside, she just comes across as really mean. But you can tell she wants to be an adult and free and treated that way. But it's like, you're not there yet, girl. You have a little bit of growing up to do. Then you have the bleeding heart of the family, Haftis, who is the middle sister, who can sometimes be like on her sister's side and play like bitchy older sister, but then she's also this beautiful artist and poet who really sees her younger brother and is the safe space for him, and is also a safe space for his best friend Christian, which we get to later in the film. So Thor is surrounded by women, and like that would be an airplane, I hope. But he grew up surrounded by femininity, so he kind of has a bit of a softer nature. He's shorter. He gets made fun of by a lot of his peers for his size and just like being a little bit more feminine, which is ironic because there's a hair in my mouth. Come out. So he gets made fun of. In the beginning, he's like beating up a fish, and I thought he was very aggressive, and then like as the story unfolds, he's just like the opposite of that. And so then you have his best friend Christian, who is raised by a mother and father who are married. However, you can tell the relationship is extremely tumultuous. The father is quite abusive, both verbally and physically, specifically to Christian, but he's just like an aggressive drunk being that looms around the entire film, and he like created such an uneasy presence anytime he was on screen, or like when I anticipated him coming into the scene soon. Like, he just made me so uncomfortable, and I hated him. So he was a great actor. He really did his job. So Christian kind of comes from this upbringing of like uncertainty and not feeling safe. So it's no surprise when they in the summer embark on, you know, the summer of their lives where they come of age, and Thor and Christian start hanging out with these two girls, Beth and Hannah, and Thor and Beth really hit it off, and he starts having a crush for her. They start dating, how, you know, like middle schoolers date. It's just kind of like hanging out and maybe you kiss, but whatever. So while that's happening, Christian is kind of realizing and like curiously playing with the idea of having romantic feelings for Thor, and there's all of these different moments where they like either almost kiss or do kiss and touch each other in a way that you would assume is like gay and romantic, but they're young boys. And so this is where a complete like I have no idea what's going on came to me, and that's because I have no other better words to describe it. But when I was watching this film, not only was there that barrier of like, it was an Icelandic film, and I have no idea what it's like to grow up in Iceland, especially considering there were no trees. The landscape was so vast, so beautiful, so green, so rich, and there were no trees. I thought how vulnerable to live where you have nothing to shroud you from your neighbor, like hide you the way that trees and woods can do. So already, like, it was just such a vulnerable way of life. It kind of reminded me of like Banshee of Inisherin and like the ways like of Ireland, or even like the moors in Wuthering Heights, where you can just like see your neighbor, and it's kind of invasive and voyeuristic in a way, and it makes you like know your neighbors more and know about the reputations, and have people like turning their nose up at other people a little bit more, which happens in this film. So I found that all to be extremely interesting. Specifically though, I grew up watching coming of age stories about girls because I'm a girl, and I wanted to see different female experiences. Now granted, majority of them were white suburban blonde girls who had a little bit of angst and wanted to leave their suburban town and go live in a city and be different. I fit that trope kind of like nail on the head. I think of Lady Bird, I think of Frances Ha, I think of Girls. That's like a lot of the media, like 10 Things I Hate About You. I just watched She's the Man Today. Like, I grew up with a lot of that. And so now as I've gotten older, I watch a lot of different coming of age stories, but they are all still primarily following that same stereotype to some degree or some fashion. Like even A Diary of a Teenage Girl that I recently watched, that was the same idea. Sharp Stick, kind of a similar idea, but different because I believe the main character is neurodivergent, so that adds a whole nother layer. But it's like these, you know, basically you know, I've watched a lot of coming of age stories that are centered around women because selfishly I am one and I'm more curious about that experience. And watching, you know, women of color and trans women and other queer women where it's like our experiences growing up are different, and like seeing and adding empathy to that experience to understand it better and like expand my worldview, because like I said in the beginning, your world is only as big as you make it, and it's like ignorant to not care about other people or be curious about the way other people live. I don't know, but like majority of coming of age films are about girls like me, you know. So I've never watched a movie that was a coming of age story about a boy. I don't even know what that would be like, and I just found it so interesting. There were so many commonalities between how I grew up, and like I remember kissing the mirror. I remember, you know, making up weird games on the playground to like get boys and girls to like talk to each other or whatever. I remember sleepovers with my girlfriends and like telling each other secrets and having crushes and all. It was just so surprising to me. I guess I've never really thought about what it's like for boys to grow up. I had boy cousins, but like we would like hang out and like we forced them to be a part of our like sketches and put them in costumes and stuff. You know, so I guess that was kind of my point in the beginning of like you should watch other movies from different cultures and different languages and different experiences to like rethink the world. The film goes on and it's this beautiful like platonic but also in some ways like explorative romantic storyline between Thor and Christian, but then you have Christian's abusive father, and like all of these different things keep happening where the boys are exposed as like really friendly or presumably gay to their peers, and everybody is obviously up in arms about that because that's not, you know, the status quo. Like there's a painting of them that like all the boys see when there's a party at the house that Haft is painted of them that was so vulnerable and raw and like it encapsulated their friendship beautifully because they really were friends. And I do not think it's absurd to believe that, you know, children are curious and like can have like children, they're teenagers, but like adolescents, you have those feelings and you're exploring it, and it makes sense if that's the only media that you consume as well as like coming of age stories in the same right. So I just found it really interesting, and towards the end of the film we just kind of see this slow diversion between the two as Thor is like into Beth and wants to continue that and is sick of being presumed to be gay because he hangs out with Christian, and he's like, Christian, stop being weird and everything will be fine. And Christian just wants to escape himself, and the way he does that is by hanging out with Thor, but now that's become compromised, and we get to this head at the end of the film where he runs away and he attempts to take his own life in a barn with a handgun, which was terrifying, and I sobbed hysterically. And then the next morning snow falls. And so we were following this beautiful summer in Iceland, and I really had never considered Iceland in the summer. So that was also really nice. The language is also incredibly beautiful. There were so many similarities to English that I found like if I looked away from the screen for a moment, I still was completely aware of the conversations happening. And I find picking up on those patterns or commonalities in language etymology is something I really love. I truly do. All that to say, I just really thought the film was beautiful. And so the snow starts to fall, and it's almost like this snap back to reality, like summer's over. Christian, his parents are separating, his mom and him are moving to Reykjavik in the city, and he'll be leaving Thor, and Thor has to go back to like his life that was before. Like Beth broke up with him, his friend tried to commit suicide, and like they're not going to be friends anymore, and it's basically just this like tragedy. So the snow falling is very poetic, but it's also that just like reality check of like, yep, okay, winter's coming. All that fantasy of summer and play is over. We have to go back to reality. And it reminds me, I don't know if this is personal to me, but it reminds me of like growing up, and I think back to summers specifically when I was in high school and how nothing mattered, and that was like the most important time of my life. What I was doing on the 4th of July, how I could like sneak out and go to a party with no license, and how was I finding rides and alcohol, and that I don't condone any of this, but I was a party girl. So like for me, it was all about hanging out with my friends and just like summer forever. I like think Spring Breakers, but without the plot, just like the fact that it was like we want to do this forever. And now I'm an adult, and like there really is no summer break the way that it used to be. It's just kind of like life is like just happening at all times, and then you look up one day and it's like, oh, the trees are growing back. Okay, nice. I'm feeling a little bit happier now that there's not darkness at 4 p.m. Like, I'm kind of getting back to myself. But the way that you appreciate the seasons, and they have such meaning because they're limited, I found that to be incredibly interesting, presented in an Icelandic coming of age queer story about young boys, because it's something I would never naturally pick. Which, again, it goes back to the original theme of the film, which would be to watch films outside of your own relatability. I don't actually know. Was I covering my face the whole time? I'm just really enjoying the conversations I'm having with myself. But, like, if I think of other foreign films of mine that I really enjoyed, The Blood Spattered Bride is one of my favorite movies of all time. I loved Titan. I loved Raw. Talk about self-cannibalizing. Maybe watch that one. That one was pretty gross, but I really liked that movie. It was also... let me open Letterboxd and see. Taste of Cherry, very, 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 very incredibly good and very sad. I love that movie so much. Waltz with Bashir is another one that I watched and think about all the time because of the mixed composition and animation, which I just really enjoy. And let's just like look quickly, and hopefully my camera doesn't die, because that would be just another bump in the road, really. Watch The Square. That was a Swedish satire about artists, and it was like a political commentary on how artists like present in their work a concern for the well-being of society, but then are like not willing to give change to a person on the street because it's inconveniencing them and they have to get to a meeting. That's the cheapest way I could sum up that film for you. What was this one? Somewhere in Between was a short film I had the pleasure of watching at the Buffalo International Film Festival last year, which was just so heartbreaking, devastating, evocative, colorful, and even as tragic as it was, in some way, it felt hopeful to me. I really enjoyed that movie as well. So much time has passed. The sun has set behind the clouds over there, and I'm just relaxing. I've been relaxing all day. So I don't remember where we last left off. I believe I was talking about Heartstone, and then I was recommending you some of my favorite foreign films. So I just decided it'd be easier to make a list. Hold on, my sister's asking me what I want for dinner, and I think I want a sub. I'm gonna continue with the list of films that I wrote down. City of God, great Brazilian film. Watched that, I think, in a world cinema class. I just remember being enamored by the color grading and the saturation and like how beautiful it was. It's also just a really interesting story. Start there. Watch that. Dogtooth, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. That was odd. That was strange. Incestuous, even. So, warning there. Cleo from 5 to 7 is one of my favorites. This is like an anxiety-inducing film following this woman waiting for results regarding her health. I can't remember, was it cancer or like something about her health? I can't remember. I watched it so long ago. I just thought it was very whimsical, and I really enjoyed like the anxiety-inducing black and white French film. Remember, it's pretentious. That's why we're wearing the hat. Okay. Suspiria. I think I have a video talking about Suspiria on here. I love that movie. I really do. The original, and I also, of course, love the Luca Guadagnino version with Dakota Johnson and Mia Goth and other people whose names I can't remember right now. In the Mood for Love. Absolutely love that movie. I believe I included it on one of my Valentine's Day guides. I cannot remember. Revenge. I have a video on Revenge. So, like, there's a lot of different entry points into foreign film, and there's plenty over on DGM for you to check out. Indulge yourself with. Try something new. Click something that you typically wouldn't. When you go on any streaming platform and you're about to hit a movie and you're recommended, or maybe a movie you've watched before, maybe, just maybe, browse a couple other genres that you maybe haven't before and try and find one in a different language. And try something new. Try something new on the menu. that's all I have. I had a wonderful time talking to myself and you out here. The grass looks so much greener when I wear my rose-colored glasses, and that's why I prefer red tinted sunglasses all summer. It's so romantic out here. If you have any movie recommendations, let me know. I've been in a horror mood lately, but I'm always looking for a rom-com that's going to make me want to scoop my eyes out and put them down the garbage disposal. So, that being said, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, or don't. I'll be here either way. Hopefully we have patio furniture soon so I can sit outside and do more videos. I actually have a pet robin, my lucky robin Sylvie, and her partner Sylvester. I don't know if they're siblings or partners. I also don't know if they're male or female, but I do know I have 2 robins that keep guard of me through my window. So all that said, till next time, stay flirty, stay thirsty, watch more movies together, make more movies together, and I'll see you next time. Also, stay tuned because the Dry Gin Martini Magazine's 2nd anniversary is coming out on April 15th, and so many wonderful people are a part of that I couldn't be more grateful for, but there will be a video on that soon, and then my birthday's also coming up, so just stick around. I'll be here. Anyway, thanks again. No act is too small, no dream is too big also. Was that ASMR? Okay. I want to go see the drama tonight, but I also don't want to buy a movie ticket, and I don't want to leave the house. But I haven't left the house today. That's okay. Okay. Chin chin.